Thomas was a tank engine who lived at the big station. He was a fussy little engine with six wheels that were close to the size of Percy's, Edward's, and Gordon's, a medium-sized funnel, a long boiler, and a short stumpy dome. At this point in time, Thomas had his dipped running board, which was at both ends. Thomas always had to be careful when it came to sharp bends. He would always have to go slow, otherwise he would derail. One day, Thomas had to shunt a long train for Henry to take. At this point in time, Henry only had his old shape. So often enough, Thomas would have to help Henry to get up hills or anywhere, but he would always have to come back to the yard and jump for the big engines, although Thomas was pretty much the exact same size as Gordon. He always had to be careful when entering a yard, just in case he might derail. His wheels were long, so he would have to always be careful. His driver would always remind him to be careful because he didn't want anything bad going on. Thomas was a very large engine, which resulted in few crashes. Before he came to Sodor, he actually had a bunch of crashes. But this was resolved because on his old railway he had a bunch of tight corners. And all his brothers, which were all gone, well, all except a couple, which worked at the big harbour in London, almost probably at war. Thomas came before the war, so he didn't have to fight in it, thankfully. But Thomas would always take ammunition or cargo for the big engines or anything. When he arrived, he actually had 2 trucks and 3 coaches full of people that were trying to escape the war. They were successful, which was good. They didn't want anything bad happening. "Be careful, Thomas," said his driver. "You should be careful, just in case engines or you might derail. Plus, the trucks could also push you." Half of the time, Thomas would understand, but half of the time, he didn't. He was continuing to shunt, ready for Henry's goods train, when something broke. A bunch of his trucks derailed, which also caused his back slope, a part of his running board to be cut up due to the fact of a truck derailed and broke a part of it. He had to go to the works for a couple of months, so he was out of action. Just then, Stanley, one of the pre-owned engines of the Fat Controllers, was brought to help Thomas. He was going to be sent to the works, but if there was no room, Then he would have to be put at the back of the shed, behind Stanley, or on a siding next to Tidmouth sheds. Thomas was depressed. He wished he could be really useful, but he knew he couldn't, not unless he had the repairs he needed. Just then, Stanley remembered. If Thomas needs to go to the works, but there's no room, or they don't have time for Thomas, what about putting him in the Knapford Station sheds? Tidmouth Station sheds. They would have enough room. Plus, at least he could talk to Percy and Toby while he waits. What a good idea, said his driver. Stanley wasn't very fast, but he tried to get to Thomas. But now and then have a couple of derailments, which weren't very pleasant. Eventually, he got derailed that much that his wheels would come off the track. I'm sorry, Stanley, but you need to go to the works as well. Gordon was sent. He knew that Thomas was badly damaged, but he was still surprised and laughing when he heard the news. When can this engine stop crashing? He knows that we rely on him, but why this? He was just passing the final point before he would be close to Thomas. He was happy to at least be helping a friend. Plus, he was also laughing about the fact that Thomas derailed himself, when really he didn't hear the full story. He missed parts of it, but first, he would have to take a drink. After a while, his drink was over, and then had to continue. I'll be back for you soon, said Gordon to his coaches. The coaches waited. As Gordon went past, I wonder how far Thomas is. He just went past the station when he saw Thomas. He looked battered. Gordon seen and added a couple up. He tried to pull, but he couldn't. He tried again, but he couldn't. He puffed and puffed and puffed and puffed while panting. But nothing worked. It was close to night time when it was about to start. Just leave me, said Thomas. You need your sleep. No, I will not. He puffed and puffed and puffed again. But nothing was working. And it was just making things worse. Thomas was almost gone because the trucks were cutting him up more and more. "Come on, Thomas, work!" He puffed and puffed. His face was almost blue. "What about getting another engine?" Thomas said. "That's a good idea, but where are we going to get another engine? I'm the only available one, and I'm almost late." "Don't worry," said Thomas. "Are you sure?" said Gordon's driver. "You can't stay here all night and all day." They tried and tried. Eventually, Gordon got him out. He was happy. He was pushing him, or should I say, pulling him, to where he was needed. 2 months later, Thomas's new driver was coming. He was rocking up to the shed when he saw Thomas. He was walking around him. He looked way different than what he did originally. He had now 6 more wheels, a tall stumpy funnel, a short stumpy boiler, and a short stumpy dome. He didn't look anything like an E2 now. Percy and Toby were shocked. "Well, I guess this is what they call transformations," said Toby. "Yeah, and this is what he appeared like ever since that day."